Why did everyone fear the Nizari Isma'ilis? In the heart of the medieval Islamic world, this small but powerful sect gained a reputation that shook empires. Known in the West as the Assassins, they lived in impregnable mountain fortresses, striking fear into kings, sultans, and crusaders alike. Their secretive operations, daring assassinations, and absolute loyalty to their leaders created legends that spread far beyond their true numbers. Were they ruthless fanatics or strategic survivors, fighting for survival in a hostile world? Join us as we uncover the truth behind the myths and explore why the Nizari Isma'ilis inspired such fear. Fear is one of the most powerful forces in history. It shapes empires, inspires legends, and often outlives the people or groups who originally inspired it. Few historical communities embodied this truth as much as the Nizari Isma'ilis, an Islamic sect from the medieval period that came to be remembered across the Muslim and Christian worlds as the Assassins. From their impregnable fortresses in the mountains of Persia and Syria, they cast a long shadow over rulers, generals, and crusaders, despite their relatively small numbers. But why did everyone fear them? To answer this, we must move beyond the myths of fanatical killers and delve into their history, beliefs, strategies, and the way enemies painted them. The Nizari Isma'ilis were not simply a band of ruthless assassins. They were a community fighting for survival, using fear itself as their sharpest weapon. Origins of the Nizari Isma'ilis. The Ismaili branch of Islam emerged from disputes over succession in the early centuries of the Muslim world. They believed in a line of imams, spiritual leaders, descended from the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter Fatima and son-in-law Ali. When disagreements arose over which imam was the rightful successor, the community split. By the 11th century, a missionary named Hassan I rose as a central figure in Persia. Charismatic, intelligent, and deeply committed to the Ismaili cause, he gathered followers and established his base at Alamut Castle, a fortress hidden in the mountains of northern Iran. From there, the Nizari Isma'ilis began to carve out a society that was both religious and strategic. Yet they were surrounded by powerful enemies: the Sunni Seljuk Empire, hostile rulers, and later, Christian crusaders. They had no massive armies to rely on, no empire backing them. To survive, they needed unconventional methods: the strategy of fear. The Nizari Isma'ilis could not outnumber their enemies on the battlefield. Instead, they turned to targeted strikes against key political and military figures. This was not random violence, it was psychological warfare. By eliminating powerful individuals, they created an atmosphere of dread that extended far beyond the act itself. Their operatives, known as the Fidayyin, meaning those who sacrifice themselves, were trained to infiltrate enemy camps, palaces, and even mosques. They often carried out assassinations in broad daylight, ensuring maximum visibility. Sometimes, they killed in public squares or in the presence of bodyguards, demonstrating both courage and absolute loyalty. One of their most famous victims was Nizam al-Mulk, the powerful vizier of the Seljuk Empire, who was assassinated in 1092. His death shocked the Islamic world and announced the Nizaris as a force to be reckoned with. Over time, their reputation grew so terrifying that many rulers preferred to negotiate or pay tribute rather than risk becoming targets. The role of devotion and obedience. Central to the Nizari Isma'ilis' fearsome reputation was the unquestioning loyalty of the Fidayyin. These young men were often willing to sacrifice their lives at the command of their leaders. Historical sources tell dramatic stories of Hassan I demonstrating his authority by ordering his followers to leap from fortress walls to their deaths, acts of devotion meant to prove their total submission. Whether all these tales are literal or exaggerated, the effect was the same: Outsiders saw a community of fanatics, utterly devoted and unstoppable. In a world where loyalty often bent with wealth and power, such unshakable obedience seemed terrifying. Myths of the assassins. The fear of the Nizari Isma'ilis was not only rooted in their actions, but also in the myths that surrounded them. When crusaders encountered the group in the Levant, stories began to circulate in Europe. They came to be known as the assassins, a word derived from hashishin. According to legend, the Nizari leaders used hashish to intoxicate recruits, transporting them to lush gardens where they experienced visions of paradise. When they awoke, they were told that obedience to the imam could return them to that eternal bliss if they sacrificed themselves on missions. Modern historians, however, question this story. It may have been propaganda spread by their enemies, designed to paint them as dangerous fanatics. Nonetheless, the myth stuck. From these stories, Europe inherited the very word assassin, forever tying the Nizaris to the image of secret killers. Fortresses in the clouds. Another reason the Nizari Isma'ilis inspired fear was their network of mountain fortresses. Alamut was the most famous, but they also controlled castles across Persia and Syria. These strongholds were nearly impossible to conquer, perched high in the mountains, protected by stone walls, and stocked with provisions. Invading armies often found it easier to retreat or negotiate than attempt costly sieges. The very existence of these eagles' nests became legendary. They were seen as hidden sanctuaries where plots were woven, daggers prepared, and loyal assassins trained in secrecy. Relations with the crusaders. During the Crusades, the Nizari Isma'ilis played a complex role. At times, they fought against crusaders. At other times, they formed uneasy truces or even alliances. Their unpredictability only added to their mystique. European chroniclers described them with a mix of horror and fascination. They told stories of knights who feared assassination in their sleep and leaders who paid bribes to the assassins for safety. Even the mighty Saladin, the great Muslim leader who reclaimed Jerusalem, became a target of Nizari plots. Though he survived, the attempts on his life reinforced the idea that no one was beyond their reach. A reputation larger than life. What truly made the Nizari Isma'ilis so feared was not just what they did, but how people talked about them. Enemies exaggerated their ruthlessness. Crusaders spun tales of mystical assassins, and rulers spread rumors to justify wars against them. This atmosphere of fear became one of their greatest weapons. Sometimes they did not even need to strike. Whispers of their involvement were enough to unsettle rulers. Letters bearing threats, daggers left in beds, or mere rumors of plots caused paranoia. In this way, they extended their power far beyond their small numbers. Mongols and the fall of Alamut. The Mongol invasions of the 13th century eventually brought the downfall of the Nizari strongholds. Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, targeted them during his campaigns in Persia. In 1256, after a long siege, Alamut fell. Many fortresses followed, and the Nizari Isma'ilis were scattered. Yet even in defeat, their legend survived. Chroniclers continued to tell stories of the assassins for centuries, and their image as shadowy, dangerous figures endured in both the Islamic and Western imagination. Beyond fear, a community of survival. It would be a mistake to reduce the Nizari Isma'ilis to mere assassins. Behind the legends was a community striving to preserve its faith and identity in a hostile world. They developed intellectual traditions, spiritual teachings, and systems of governance within their fortresses. Today, the Ismaili community, led by the Aga Khan, is known for education, development, and humanitarian work. Their history as the feared assassins is only one chapter of a much broader story. Why were they feared? To summarize, the fear of the Nizari Isma'ilis rested on several foundations. Targeted assassinations. They killed powerful figures in shocking, public ways. Unshakable loyalty. Their Fida'in were willing to die without hesitation. Impregnable fortresses. Their mountain castles symbolized mystery and defiance. Myths and legends. Stories of drugged assassins and secret rituals magnified their terror. Propaganda of enemies. Both Muslim and Christian chroniclers painted them as more dangerous than they were. Psychological warfare. Their greatest weapon was fear itself, spread through rumor as much as action. The enduring legacy. Why everyone feared the Nizari Isma'ilis. Fear is one of humanity's oldest weapons. Long before cannons, gunpowder, and modern armies, fear could topple kings, halt invasions, and paralyze societies. In the medieval world, few groups understood and wielded this weapon better than the Nizari Isma'ilis, a small Shia Muslim community whose reputation shook empires far larger than themselves. From their mountain fortresses in Persia and Syria, they inspired terror in Seljuk viziers, crusader knights, and even legendary leaders like Saladin. The enduring question is, why did everyone fear them? The answer lies not only in their assassinations or their fortresses, but in their ability to craft fear as both shield and sword. Outnumbered, surrounded, and constantly under threat, the Nizari Isma'ilis transformed weakness into strength by using terror as a form of psychological warfare. Their story is one of survival against impossible odds, and it leaves us with lessons about perception, power, and human resilience. A people besieged. To understand the Nizari Isma'ilis' reliance on fear, we must remember their situation. They emerged as a splinter group within Islam at a time of political and religious upheaval. The Sunni Seljuks dominated the Islamic world. The Crusaders had invaded from the west, and rival Muslim powers contested every frontier. For the Nizaris, there was no empire to shield them, no vast army to defend them, no allies to rely on. They were isolated, vulnerable, and constantly painted as heretics. In such a world, traditional warfare would have been suicide. Their survival depended on adopting methods that compensated for their small numbers. Thus, they embraced the logic of asymmetric struggle. If you cannot terrify with your size, terrify with your precision. Assassination as strategy. Assassination has existed throughout history, but the Nizari Isma'ilis elevated it to an art of survival. Instead of waging open battles they could not win, they struck surgically at the most influential figures, viziers, generals, and rulers. When Nizam al-Mulk, the Seljuk vizier, fell to a Nizari assassin in 1092, the entire region trembled. The message was clear: no one, not even the highest officials, was safe. The killing of such a towering political figure was not just an act of violence. It was a calculated move to destabilize their enemy's sense of security. The assassinations were carried out by the Fida'in, young devotees who pledged their lives to the Imam. Their missions often ended in death, yet they carried them out with extraordinary courage. To outsiders, this was fanaticism. To the Nizaris, it was sacrifice for survival. The theater of fear. The Nizari Isma'ilis understood that the spectacle of violence could be more powerful than violence itself. Their assassinations were often public, staged in mosques, marketplaces, or royal courts. The act itself mattered less than the ripple it sent through society. Imagine being a ruler in the 12th century. You could surround yourself with guards, walls, and armies, but none of it guaranteed safety. A dagger could find you even in prayer. Letters with threats, daggers left on pillows, or whispered rumors of Fida'in already among your guards could unravel your peace of mind. The Nizaris created a psychology of paranoia. Rulers began to act cautiously, sometimes even paying tribute to avoid their wrath. Their true numbers mattered little. Their reputation did the work. Loyalty that terrified the world. Another reason they inspired such dread was the absolute loyalty of their followers. Tales spread of Faidoayan leaping from fortress walls at the command of their leaders, demonstrating that obedience outweighed the instinct for survival. Whether these stories were exaggerated or not, the effect was the same. Outsiders saw the Nizaris as a community of unshakable devotion. In a world where alliances were often broken for gold or power, such unwavering faith appeared almost supernatural. How could an enemy fight against those who feared death so little? This image of disciplined, self-sacrificing agents amplified the aura of terror. The fortress in the sky. The Nizaris' strongholds themselves became symbols of invincibility. Alamut Castle, perched high in the mountains of northern Persia, was the most legendary. Surrounded by cliffs, equipped with secret passages and stocked with food and water, it embodied the image of a community beyond the reach of ordinary armies. From these eagles' nests, as crusaders sometimes call them, the Nizaris orchestrated their operations. Invading them required immense effort and heavy losses. For many rulers, it was easier to negotiate or to avoid provoking them altogether. Thus, the fortress was not only a physical defense, but also a psychological one, an unreachable lair where fear itself was manufactured. Myths and legends, the birth of the assassins. Much of the fear surrounding the Nizaris came from stories spread by their enemies and foreign observers. Crusaders carried tales of the mysterious assassins back to Europe. Chroniclers claimed that recruits were drugged with hashish and shown gardens of paradise, convincing them to obey without question. This tale gave rise to the word assassin, but historians now see it as propaganda. It was easier for enemies to portray the Nizaris as drugged fanatics than to admit they were disciplined, strategic, and effective. Nevertheless, the myth worked in the Nizaris' favor. Whether true or not, it made rulers believe they faced a secretive order of mystical killers, far more terrifying than the reality. Fear once again proved their shield. Saladin and the Crusaders. The great Muslim leader, Saladin himself, felt the shadow of the Nizaris. Twice, assassins attempted to kill him during his campaigns. Though he survived, the attempts left an impression. Even one of the most celebrated warriors of the age could not rest easy knowing the Nizaris might strike at any moment. Crusaders, too, dreaded them. Some knights supposedly paid the assassins for protection, while others told stories of comrades slain in their sleep. To Europeans, the Nizaris became almost mythical, a secret brotherhood with daggers sharper than armies. This mix of history and legend ensured that their reputation spread far beyond their borders. The Mongol storm. Eventually, the Nizaris met an enemy they could not outwit, the Mongols. Hulagu Khan, leading vast armies across Persia, turned his attention to the Nizari fortresses. In 1256, Alamut fell after a brutal siege, and other strongholds followed. The physical power of the Mongols shattered the Nizaris' military presence. Yet even in defeat, their legend survived. Chroniclers continued to write about them as shadowy figures, and their name endured as a byword for terror. Fear as shield and sword. Looking back, the Nizaris' genius lay in their recognition that survival was not just about swords and soldiers. It was about perception. By fostering fear, they made themselves larger than life. Fear protected them. Enemies hesitated to attack, negotiated, or even paid tribute. Fear projected power. Their small community seemed capable of influencing entire empires. fear-shaped identity. Their enemies' propaganda only reinforced the Nizari's aura of danger, which in turn helped preserve them. In many ways, they pioneered a medieval form of psychological warfare, centuries before such terms existed. Lessons from the Nizaris. The enduring legacy of the Nizari Isma'ilis is not simply that they were feared, but that they show us how fear operates in history. Their story teaches several lessons. Perception can outweigh reality. A small group can appear larger than life if it controls the narrative. Discipline and devotion inspire awe. Their loyalty made them seem unstoppable. Fear is both shield and prison. While it protected them, it also fixed their image in history as assassins, overshadowing other aspects of their culture. Legends outlive armies. Even after their castles fell, their myth endured for centuries. Beyond the shadows. Today, the Nizari Ismaili community has a very different reputation. Under the guidance of the Aga Khan, they are known for education, humanitarian efforts, and cultural preservation. The descendants of the so-called assassins are now seen as builders rather than destroyers. Yet the shadow of their medieval past lingers in language itself. Whenever we use the word assassin, we echo their history. This dual legacy, one of terror and one of resilience, reminds us that history is always layered. Behind the dagger-wielding Fidayeen was a community struggling to survive, adapt, and endure. The power of fear. Why did everyone fear the Nizari Isma'ilis? Because fear was the one weapon they could wield against overwhelming odds. It was their shield when armies threatened, their sword when enemies closed in, and their legacy long after their castles crumbled. Theirs is a story of paradox, a tiny community that survived by making itself appear vast, a people remembered more for their myths than their truths, and a reminder that perception can shape history as much as reality. Fear, once cultivated, can outlast stone walls and empires. For the Nizari Isma'ilis, it was a tool that allowed them not only to survive, but to write themselves into the memory of the world. The story of the Nizari Isma'ilis reminds us that fear often grows from mystery, strategy, and survival. Though their enemies called them assassins, their legacy is more than shadows and daggers. It's about resilience, loyalty, and the power of belief. From hidden fortresses to whispered legends, they carved a place in history that still fascinates today. If you enjoyed this journey into their world, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations of hidden histories and forgotten truths. And let us know in the comments, what you think truly made the Nizari Isma'ilis so feared?